Hello everyone and welcome to This World, coming to you this week from in front of the White House in Washington DC, and that's because it's been a really interesting period when it comes to global affairs and specifically India's place in this world. G20, great euphoria, and that was followed by a somewhat bizarre allegation and a moment in the Canadian Parliament where Justin Trudeau stands up and accuses India of a targeted assassination of a Canadian citizen on Canada's soil. What does that mean for India's relationships, not just with Canada, but also with America and the rest of the West? We're going to turn our attention to that. We'll also be looking at some broader questions, such as that big question of who's going to be occupying the White House approximately 1.5 years from now. Will it be Trump? Will it be Biden? Will it be somebody else? We'll tell you where the state of battle is at this present moment. And we'll turn our attention to something else causing a lot of concern here in the United States. And that's the fentanyl epidemic. You've all seen these pictures, these images of rioting, these images of homelessness, these images of devastation in American cities. It's not just because of crime and homelessness. It's also because of fentanyl. And we'll tell you why it is such a problem. All of that coming up for you this week on This World. But I'm going to begin with Canada. It's been a somewhat bizarre period for Canada. Here's a country often called the nice guy when it comes to international politics. Canada, the good country, the good neighbor to America. And now you have a situation in just a short period of time. You've had Canada fighting with China, of course. We all remember those images of Xi lecturing Justin Trudeau. And now Canada has picked a massive fight with India. And if you thought that wasn't enough in just a short period of time for Canada, you now had this particular moment in Canada where you have Canadian Parliament standing up and applauding, giving a standing ovation to a Nazi. What's exactly happening with Canada? Well, let's try and put together this special report.
Canada has not withdrawn its accusations on India. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has not provided any proof. India, on the other hand, has served significant information on Canada promoting organized crime. In fact, the Indian Minister of External Affairs, S. Jaishankar, has said that there's an ideological agenda behind Canada's accusations and that Trudeau's claims are riddled with inaccuracies. But India is still open to specific information that Canada could provide as proof. Listen to this.
We have actually been badgering the Canadians. We have given them a lot of information about organized crime leadership, which operates out of Canada. There are a large number of extradition requests. There are terrorist leaders who have been identified. So do understand that there is an environment out there. So that is important in a way to factor in.
Meanwhile, Western nations have shown great support for India, especially the United States. A former Pentagon official, Michelle Rubin, has said that if the United States had to choose between Canada and India, the nation would choose the latter, as the relationship is quote-unquote too important.
Probably understand that Justin Trudeau has gone too far. So this isn't a fight he wants to have. I suspect that the United States doesn't want to be pinned in the corner to choose between two friends, but if we have to choose between two friends, increasingly we're going to choose India on this matter.
The official also added that Canada's fight with India is like an ant picking up a fight against an elephant. You see, U.S.-India ties work as a bulwark against China's assertive rise in Asia. Naturally, the U.S. Security Committee believes that Trudeau has gone too far this time. Meanwhile, the Canadian Parliament managed to raise tensions further.
This was deeply embarrassing for the House and for Canada.
So much so that Trudeau went to the extent of saying that he is deeply embarrassed on behalf of the Parliament and the nation. Why? Well, the Canadian Parliament thought it would be a good idea to honor a war veteran who fought for the Germany's Nazi regime. This happened while the Parliament was hosting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. A 98-year-old Nazi war veteran Yaroslav Hunka was sitting in the gallery when the Parliament Speaker Anthony Rota highlighted Hunka's presence. Rota did not use the word Nazi. In fact, he called him a Ukrainian hero and a Canadian hero. The Nazi war veteran was thanked for his service. The whole Parliament, in fact, applauded him and then gave him a standing ovation. Even Zelensky had a proud smile on his face. So who exactly were these people actually thanking? Well, it helps to look at Yaroslav Hunka's credentials. He served in the 14th Waffen-SS Grenadier Division during World War II. The unit was made of ethnic Ukrainians under Nazi command. The division was accused of killing Polish and Jewish civilians. So how did no one know that they were thanking a veteran who had served the Nazis? Did nobody do a background check on the man? When did the realization kick in? Well, 2 days later, the Parliament Speaker said that he regretted his decision. He apologized to Jewish communities around the world and he has now resigned from his post. You see, this one incident can have major implications beyond Canada's borders. The nation is already slowly straining its ties with India. Most of the West is leaning towards New Delhi, and now after honoring the Nazi war veteran, Canada has justified Russia's cause in the war in Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has pushed a narrative to denazify Ukraine, and Trudeau has added more fuel to the fire. Your report, WION World is One.
Well, let's now try and get a sense of how the White House and the entire American establishment is perhaps reacting to this entire India-Canada affair. Great to have with us Michael Rubin.
Hey, thanks for having me, Vikram.
You've been at the Pentagon, you're a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. You also had been expressing your views on how all of this is going down.
Yes.
How do you think it's going down? How do you think most people are reacting to this India-Canada blow-up and dust-up happening at a time when I would have suspected the White House and others would have been trying to woo India a lot?
Well, without doubt, it caught us by surprise. This wasn't a crisis we saw coming, even if we had provided some of the intelligence after the fact of Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder. That said, I think there's increasing frustration with Justin Trudeau, who has had any numbers of off-ramps to diffuse this crisis, and he has not. The last point I would make is simply, if we were ignoring Khalistani terrorism before, if we were ignoring it after the attack on the San Francisco consulate, no one is ignoring it now.
The Indian side is saying that, look, I don't know what the evidence is here, but we've been giving you evidence for 40 years about the possible implications of Khalistani terrorism. And you've done nothing about it for 40 years. So the rules of law should presumably cover that. I mean, I guess what do you do in a situation like that if no one is heeding genuine concerns?
Well, we know what the United States does in situations like that. I mean, people forget, but we once tried to take our evidence about bin Laden to the Taliban, and they ignored us. And ultimately, we went after bin Laden. We killed him. I see this as a corollary situation. Now, I don't want to say that it should be open season for every government everywhere against people they don't like, but the fact of the matter is, India is the world's most populous democracy. The United States is the world's second most populous democracy. We have rule of law, we have procedures, and if a country like Canada or Pakistan isn't willing to take reasonable steps, well, ultimately, it's the job of any democratically elected prime minister or president to uphold the security of his own people first and foremost.
So that's an interesting point you make. And the Indian Foreign Minister Jaishankar was just saying that the United Nations, the rule of law has to apply to everybody. But as you said, you can't have open season. You can't have everyone running around shooting people, if it doesn't happen. Between democracy, between allies, should there be a system where you say these are the legitimate concerns we've got and you need to take it on board?
Well, I mean, Vikram, there is that system. The problem was the Canadians were ignoring it. I mean, they really were becoming a safe haven for terror finance, a safe haven for extremism, a safe haven for terror. What's not permissible in any of the countries is incitement to violence, and that's what we've seen here.
Hoarding, saying assassinate Indian diplomats.
Yeah.
Acts of violence inside Punjab. And these are emotive issues, specifically because violence has now come down in Indian Punjab. There is no Khalistani movement inside
Right.
India. It's all happening in Canada.
If you drain the financial resources from the Khalistani movement, it will go away because it has no legitimacy whatsoever in Punjab or anywhere else in India.
do you think this has damaged India's relations with the rest of the West, with the US, with others, or no?
Look, Vikram, there's very little that George W. Bush, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden agree on. The only thing they do agree on is the importance of the U.S.-Indian relationship. We're seeing that tested, and we're seeing it come through solid.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vikram.
Thank you. All right, let me now turn to another big story that we are wanting to turn our attention to, and that, of course, is the question of who is going to be occupying the White House come January 2025. Will it be the man who's there right now, Joe Biden? He's in the White House right now. Is he going to be back? Could it be Donald Trump, the man who was here till just a couple of years ago? Or is it going to be somebody else completely surprising? Now, the race has already started in a sense. We're seeing debates that have been taking place this week. We've been seeing all these legal cases around Trump and what that means. And then there's Joe Biden, no clear challenger right now from the Democratic side, but there are questions over him, including, of course, his age. So who has the edge? Well, this is the state of play as of now, but it could change.
The 2024 US presidential elections promise to be like no other election. The race for the top seat is already heating up. The two top heavyweight candidates are former President Donald Trump from the Grand Old Party and incumbent President Joe Biden from the Democratic side. Although Trump faces several indictments for his efforts to undermine the 2020 elections, reports show that he could be leading the polls ahead of Biden.
Well, I want to thank everybody. I do love...
But Trump doesn't only need to fear Biden, he also has Republican candidates who seek to dethrone him as the frontrunner. Contenders like Mike Pence, Chris Christie, Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Asa Hutchinson, Doug Burgum, Will Hurd, Larry Elder, and Perry Johnson. They're all ready to put up a tough fight against the former president. Be it through his lawyers or his own words, Trump has managed to keep his supporters in his bubble of innocence. Time and again, he has reiterated how he is a victim of politically motivated prosecutions. Interestingly, the situation of incumbent President Biden is not so different. Although the Democrat doesn't have a list of legal charges against him, he has his own share of problems that could derail his presidential campaign. From his absurd gaffes during crucial speeches to growing criticism about his deteriorating age, Biden not only has to make voters believe that he can stretch for another term, he also has to show a clean slate after being accused of being involved in his son Hunter Biden's legal cases. But did you know a Republican is also facing the same accusations as Biden's son?
We don't want any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice.
The newcomer Republican candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy, who has portrayed himself as being tough on China, was in business with high-ranking members of the Chinese Communist Party. Reports show that Ramaswamy had business dealings with the same CCP-linked family that paid millions to Hunter Biden. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott highlighted the same during a primary debate in California.
I can't imagine how you could say that knowing that you were just in business with the Chinese Communist Party and the same people that funded Hunter Biden millions of dollars was a partner of yours as well.
Freedom.
From dark horses like Ramaswamy to the US President Biden, most presidential candidates seem to have dirt on their hands. Are they truly ready to take on challenges of being the president? Or will they be busy trying to protect their public image? You see, the US is facing some major challenges. Number 1, abortion rights. Democrats plan to make the issue central to their campaign. Reports show that the issue is now leaning more towards supporting reproductive rights, and Democrats hope that millions will vote to remove the abortion ban. On the other hand, Democrats are split between voters who believe abortion ban should be left to individual states and people who support a national ban. Issue number 2, the economy. The Democrats say that the economy is healthy, unemployment is at its lowest, and investments in infrastructure are producing long-term job gains, while Republicans promise that they will cut federal spending, trim back federal regulations, and lower taxes. Issue number 3, gun violence. The rate of crimes linked to gun violence remains at high levels across the nation. It could also pose a threat to voters and election workers during the 2024 elections. Both Democrats and Republicans are concerned. So will the voters have a tough time choosing the new president? Will top candidates be able to show a clean slate? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Well, let's now try and find out who is going to be occupying the White House about a year and a half from now, and who better to talk to than John Christopher Buell, White House correspondent, Real Political News, been really analyzing this in great detail. John, I know you know the answer. Who's going to be here 1.5 years from now?
I pray for inspiration, but what I can see, what I can feel, I think that since Joe Biden already defeated Donald Trump, and the world has changed in 2020, the Democrats have gained more seats. They took a real strong movement, and Biden is doing very well. You know, there's all sorts of questions. The fact is that the real question is, will Donald Trump have enough time in his schedule with all the indictments and the suits and the court appearances? Will he have time to even campaign? Well, we saw this week the GOP debates with 7 of the candidates, the hopeful candidates, who will be challenging Trump, but he was a no-show.
Why is he choosing not to come for these debates? Is it because he thinks he'll be attacked, he'll have to answer questions on indictments and all of those issues?
You said it. He does. And he's trying to minimize the importance of the debates. You know, if he doesn't...
He's above it all. He's a mythical figure floating in the clouds somewhere.
Well, you said something very interesting with the word mythical, because I've known Donald Trump for 50 years. I'm from New York, okay? Giuliani too, actually. But the fact is, he thinks he is above it all. He has convinced himself that he is all-powerful, that he is all-knowledgeable, that he is all-wealthy, and now his wealth is... It's showing that his properties are going to be given away because he can't afford them. He inflated them for tax reasons and deflated the value for tax reasons. And now he's caught. He's the kind of kid who, when he was a little boy, his mother caught him with his hand in the cookie jar, and she says, "Donnie, what are you doing?" And he said, "It's not my hand." I mean, this is typical. This is typical okay. Trump.
So let's look at both the parties. So first of all, when it comes to the Republicans, yes. It is definitely Donald Trump. It's not. None of the others are likely to be able to challenge him.
Even the closest is he's like 40% above the closest.
And on the other side, on the Democratic side, will it be Biden, or is there going to be a challenge at some point?
Well, that's a very interesting question. There are some very, very good possibilities if Joe Biden decides not to run, but he's pretty committed to running. And I think he and his wife have made that choice, and he will be running. The toughest thing for Biden would be if there's a third-party candidate.
Who do you think has got a better chance of beating Trump if it is Trump? Is it Biden? Is it somebody else? Because at Biden, there will always be that question around age, and is he too old, and is he going to be able to pull it together?
There is no one who has the depth, the experience, or the quality as Joe Biden in terms of what he's accomplished. And he's doing his best to present a strong character, and I think he may be the one who will see it through. And I think he possibly then will beat Trump on November 8th, 2024.
We're going to be back here next year covering this in great detail. So thank you so much for joining us.
That's a promise I will fulfill with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And before we go, let me turn my attention to something that is causing a lot of concern here in America. And that is the fentanyl epidemic. You've all seen those pictures, haven't you, of homelessness, of people on sidewalks in American city after American city, San Francisco, Philadelphia, many other cities. Now, it's not just crime and homelessness, it has a lot to do with fentanyl. And that fentanyl epidemic is spreading. It's affecting the kids now. We've seen fentanyl being found in the bedroom of small children. What is happening? What is fentanyl? And why is it causing such havoc? Here's a special report.
New York City is known to have a significant number of drug users. Reports show that the overdose crisis has reached historic levels in the city. A recent incident gave a reality check on how abysmal it has gotten. A 1-year-old boy died of a suspected drug overdose, and 3 children were admitted to the hospital. Where did it happen? In a child's nursery, a place where parents believe their children would be safe. First, officials found loads of fentanyl hidden under a mat where the children used to nap. A few days later, police found a large quantity of fentanyl and other narcotic drugs under a trapdoor at the nursery. Was the nursery being used for drug trafficking? So far, 4 people have been arrested. The nursery's owner and her tenant, who are now facing charges of narcotics possession with intent to distribute, resulting in death. The nursery owner's husband, Felix Herrera Garcia, was handcuffed after he was seen fleeing the nursery with large bags. Reni Antonio Parra Paredes' arrest could be the most crucial. Is the trafficking of fentanyl worth a child's life? You see, fentanyl is a synthetic opioid which is 50 times stronger than heroin and a staggering 100 times more potent than morphine. In 2021, for the first time ever, drug overdoses killed over 100,000 people across the country. At least 66% of the deaths were tied to fentanyl. Reports say that criminal gangs are responsible for the illegal distribution. Experts say that much of the illegal drugs are trafficked from Mexico using chemicals sourced from China. The illegal use is now causing the 4th wave of the opioid epidemic. Why is it called the 4th wave? The Center for Diseases Control and Prevention say that the first wave began in the 1990s, which mostly involved prescription and illicit drugs. The second wave came in 2010, with heroin being the core reason for overdose deaths. The third wave started in 2013, when fentanyl started being used with heroin and cocaine. Medical experts are worried about mixed use of fentanyl and other drugs. Experts say, and I quote, "Our treatment system for substance use disorder is often focused on one drug at a time, but the reality is, many people who use drugs use more than one kind of drug." Is the healthcare system ready to handle the 4th wave? Will the United States see more waves of the opioid crisis? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And that's all we have for you on this special episode of This World, coming to you from Washington, D.C. We'll be back next week with another special show where we bring you all the big stories that are taking place around the world and also big newsmakers to analyze them for you. Bye for now.